Alrighty guys, so welcome back to the build. Today we're going to be diving back into the split case 6-speed, and we're going to be taking out the old bearing races, replacing them with the new bearing races and the new bearings that we found in our parts bin that we should have seen from the get-go. So we're going to be filming from the GoPro, and we're going to be cutting out the unnecessary footage, time-lapsing some stuff, and I'm going to walk you through all the intricacies and difficulties I find along the way, and hopefully this helps, future builders as they dive into this project. All right, let's get right to it. All right. So first things first, we got to get the tool to unlock that guy so we can loosen it. Alright, so this is the brand new bearing, and in my unprofessional opinion, it should not be spinning. That shouldn't be the case, right? So, yep, well, of course. This thing's clearly being a little stiff. Now, you saw me just pull it out, right? Anyway, I'm going to use the old bearing. So that's that. We're going to press the other one in a moment. This is the brand new one. These all have the same part number. I don't have like a set of mics to measure this accurately. I could try with the calipers, I guess, and see if that tells us anything. I don't think I got a long enough set of calipers. I think I'm right at the limit of getting those points on the actual outer diameter. Okay, if I give it a light squeeze, it goes to 80 millimeter. This is something that really should be measured with a micrometer. And I don't have a nice micrometer set. Hang on. Okay, I might need to recheck these. I set this up where sitting on the steel, which is, an almost flat surface. 80.04. Okay. So that's an old one. Here's another old one. Another 80.04, 0.03. Let's check the new one again with this new and improved measurement method. Ooh. Yeah, this one's definitely tiny bit under. If you're not able to read, it's 80.01, 80.02. Okay, after my arbitrary eyeball and inspection, this guy I think is the one that I was pressing in and out of the other case half. This guy only got pressed in and out once. This one looks better on the outer surfaces. Now if we're looking at inner surfaces, no, I don't think I could say that there's a difference. Fingernail test isn't showing any ridging. There's a couple of tiny visual lines. I'm not sure if it's going to come up through that little camera, but I think I'm going to go with this one. Make sure these surfaces are nice and clean, both sides. We don't want to jam any particulate in between the steel bearing and the aluminum housing. There's no reason that we should do that. If I'm remembering right, I think this one was the slightly smaller of the old ones. Being that newest one was the smallest, so I think this was the middle-sized one. So let's see here. We're about ready to start the Tap a tap tap. There it is. Ah, great. Well, that's not what we wanted. I think we're going to have to take a look at this guy. I think this one was the one that measured slightly bigger. If this one spins as well, we might have to reach out a lifeline to Subaru gears and see what they do when they encounter something like this. One thing that I'm kind of thinking about, so when we tighten this guy inwards to set the backlash and whatnot, it's going to be pushing the race towards the outer edge where it's having way more resistance. I don't know if that makes sense. So maybe it's so loose because we're so far down, but why isn't the machine surface uniform thickness all the way down is a better question. There it is. All right. Before we go any further, we're going to reach out to Subaru gears. This one feels the tightest. It does not want to turn, so for the time being, we're going to leave that in place. All right, so I recorded this at a later date. So I got an email back from Todd down at Subaru Gears, and I sent him a couple seconds of video showing that this thing has a little bit of spin here, and he wasn't worried about it, and he seems to think it's okay that this guy can move about in here, right? Because this spacer deal for the center diff needs to be able to slide in and out in order to set the lash and all that. So it's okay if this has some movement. I can't feel like any rocking or wobbling, and you can't make this guy go side to side. It's in there well, and it does take some force to get her to go. So it's not like super loose, and I think with a little bit of pressure with the outer cap here pushing it in against the bearings, I think we're gonna be all right. All right, so we got the differential out of deep freeze. It's very cold. This is one of the old bearings. We got the trusty, what is that, 36 millimeter impact socket. And this is going to be the closest thing I got to the right size. I've got the two bearings set up over by the little space heater. It's nice and warm. Let's knock some of that moisture off. Hopefully this thing will just set right on easy, but I don't think we're quite hot enough, so that's too bad. I'm giving this thing some very light taps. Oh, great. I just realized this guy is not going to fit around the surface. Yeah, that would though. Almost. Yeah, that would. Might have to use a piece of copper. That's funny. I'm really not hitting this guy too hard. This is funny. I mean, I saw commenters on one of the previous videos describing that these things just slid right off. Let's try. Give it some gentle taps with the copper here. I don't know if this is gonna work. That's going. And it's got some wiggle room here. I think we'll be alright. Looks like it to me. I don't think you can get it any deeper. Let's try, just for the heck of it. Yeah, that's a solid thunk. It ain't going any deeper. And the copper is maybe a tiny bit bowed, if that. However, we know how to fix that, huh? Okay, this is going to be probably a little more tricky than the other side. Let's see how it goes. Okay, maybe this guy will be a little hotter of a bearing too, who knows? One more good hard tap. Neat. Alright, so there's a small buildup of moisture on top of this thing. So I'm going to put this in the front of the space heater. And it's going to take a while because this thing's a hefty solid chunk of steel and aluminum. So that's going to take its time to thaw itself. However, for the heck of it, so this is the side that it would sit in on factory. It's really tight over there. Okay, let's push this guy out of the way and check it on the other. Alright, so here's the housing we clearanced. Ooh. Ooh. Yeah, there's some rub there. Wow. This thing's wider than a factory housing. You know what? And if we look at the bolt holes, I'd say there's more meat between the shoulder of the bolt hole and the bolt. So I'm not going to work on this thing when it's frozen cold. So we're going to let that cool down. And when this thing is done cooling down, we're going to dump a good amount of oil on this thing so it does not have a water residue sitting on it and start rusting on us. Alright, so today we got new races, new bearings on the limited slip, and not too surprising, need to do some clearancing, just a little bit, not a whole lot. So, through the magic of video editing, bam, look at that. Spins free now. Okay, so I got a reminder for the viewers back home. When you set this up, you need to include a handful of bolts. You know, more is better. But what you need to do is you need to make sure you have the points sticking outwards, at least as far out as you can, and you need to include a flat. Right, that's going to ensure that the hex head of this bolt, this point, is the furthest most object. I had to clearance a good amount more in here, there, pretty much all of them. They were all having this little click, 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 click as the thing would click around. So make sure you do that. Alright, so our next step after clearancing that whole thing is to punch out the side plate. Be very careful when you punch this not to let whatever your tool is hit that race there for the bearing. Really don't want to hit that, so be very careful when you're tapping away. So we'll go ahead and tap this off camera. And there she is. Tapped out real easy. Only took like 4 good taps. I chose to use a solid hammer instead of a dead blow, and it came right out. So we're going to move this whole setup into the shop here, and we'll get the sight glass installed next. Alright, so we got the case half on the bench, and we've got the glass portion of the Subaru sight glass out. We do not want to damage that as we're tapping it in. We're going to use one of the larger through bolts as a guide when we push this guy in. So basically, if we're following along with the same steps that Todd does in the 5-speed, we're going to hammer that guy home gently. However, per his video, we're going to put Loctite around the outside of that. I know this is a press fit. Loctite should lock this guy in there. It probably will not ever come out. Now, on the underside of that, there's a gasket, so that plus the Loctite should do a good seal. Alright, so we put a thin line of blue Loctite all the way around up near the top of the radius. The video didn't Todd's video didn't describe whether or not to use red or blue or green, so I went with what I had. I have a feeling the press fit is going to do just as good a job of keeping the oil in as that did, right? I think the Loctite's just a little bit extra insurance. So drop that through bolt in. We're going to very gently... Ooh, you know what? I think we're going to need... I think the 27 should do. We're going to use that just so we don't tap the case and don't tap the bolt. Gentle, gentle, gentle. That looks really good. I love the logo, love the fillets on the nut here. This thing is a cool little piece of work here. Now we shouldn't need any Loctite on this one because of that gasket it's got there. And this thing didn't even move. This is like perfect. Alright, I'll go get a wrench and tighten that guy up. Alright, so if you're like me and you don't have a ton of fancy wrenches that go to huge sizes, this is somewhere between a 27 and a 36. I don't know what it is. So adjustable wrench, if you set it across the flats vertical like so, and then you tighten it up, you can twist enough to get it started, and then once you get it there, you can get it aligned tight. I can't get this guy seated all the way down like I would want to, so you got to make sure these adjustable jaws are tight. And once you do that, you can crank it down. So that thing's got a pretty decent neoprene gasket, and you can hear it like making that rubber squeaky noise as you're tightening it down. Right, the proper tool is to have the correct sized closed end wrench, right? But this thing just gets too fat, so it's hard to get in there. That's fairly tight. That should do just fine keeping the oil out, and if it doesn't, we'll go buy the wrench. And if it still leaks, then we'll start crying because the Loctite failed. Alright, now moving on to our next step. I think we're going to skip the breather for now. I'm going to try and move to the gear marking compound now, I think. Alright, so the next step, putting the brand new ring gear on the center diff, on the limited slip. Now, the 6-speed, the split case 6-speed differential center diff, limited slip diff is the exact same as the 5-speed limited slip center diff. And in the 5-speed video, they describe you pull from the Subaru manual that you use 45.6. It describes foot-pounds of torque to tighten these guys down. So we're gonna do the same. However, to complicate the matter, how do we clamp onto this thing to tighten down those bolts? So this guy has those nice flats, and you can stick her in a vise and clamp her down, but we don't have that here. So we're gonna have to get a little creative here and kind of think this thing through, because there's no flat under here. It's all uniform round. So we're gonna have to think that through, but before we get there, let's get these guys cinched down. Alrighty. You know what, before we even do that, let's make sure that the bigger, stronger, reversed, that should be, the original should be like a 3.9, 4.1. This is a 444, right? Yeah, 444. Make sure this guy clears. Look at that. Beautiful. Okay. That's cool. I got the same outer diameter, so that guy fits. Alright, so how are we going to clamp onto this guy? Let's just start torquing on it and see what happens. You never know. Maybe we can do it by hand. It's only 45 foot-pounds, right? Famous last words, right? Alright, so this is what I came up with. I set the whole differential into the vise. I left a rag under the bearing so it's not sitting on metal. Put a couple wood shims in here. Cranked it down very tight. Now in the 5-speed video, let's see, making sure 46, there's no half. We're just gonna have to live with 46. In the 5-speed video, he doesn't use any sort of star pattern when torquing this. Ooh, slipping. But I'm gonna attempt to use a star pattern here. There's 45. Now it's very important that you don't torque from here, because you are multiplying the distance that you're trying to rotate the whole thing. Whereas if you're here, you are, what is that, 4 or 6 inches less than the lever. So it's doing less torque through the whole body of the thing. So when you come across, you go over here. I'm going to lower the chance of it slipping. Now I don't think, this is just going to be a test here, but I don't think this is going to make it want to twist more or less if I'm out here. Oh, I think it actually does. I think we want to stay across the center here. I could be mistaken. Make that a little tighter. This is going to ruin these shims, but that's all right. They're there. Okay. Now that we got the methodology down, we're going to crank through this thing. Alright, that's all the way around. So we did the star pattern. When tightening them, I don't know if you saw in that time lapse, but I skipped one. Had to retrace my steps and crack it. Once I got them all, I went in a round pattern just to check. So I didn't miss any. So there's that. Neat. Now I believe our next step is to get the pinion gears out of the shaft, on the lower shaft, and get the new one in. So let's start that now. Alrighty, so we've got the differential done. Now we're on to the pinion. We need to disassemble this. Now the 5-speed has 4 little detent notches. The 6-speed has 2. I'm gonna do my best to use one of my, well, unfortunately, one of the nicer screwdrivers. I don't have old junk ones yet. I'm gonna do my best to drive this in there and peel up. Now, something to consider. I don't care about this pinion shaft. I have no use for it. So it doesn't matter if I mess up those threads there, as long as I can get that nut out. In addition to that, we need to lock this guy down so that we can torque this guy loose, right? So in the 5-speed video, they put that guy in a vise. You could also put this guy in a vise, as long as you preserve this one. You do not want to damage that, so you got to be very careful however you decide to grab onto this guy. Same with up here. If you're going to grab it, don't get the bearing. You need that. So without further ado, I'm going to try and undo those detents. Alright, so here we go. Hang on. I might try and set this in a vise. Actually, you know what? Hang on. Why don't we do that? We're tapping in a... Whoa, whoa, whoa. Don't lose the camera. Okay, we're tapping in quite the downward motion, so let's try going this way. 5-speed shaft doesn't have this extra 4 inches of stuff sticking out. So that's really annoying. You can't get in there and hit it the appropriate direction. I'm just trying to wedge it with this little flathead screwdriver. I think it's coming up a little bit, but it's more of destroying the metal underneath and kind of wedging it in there, so I don't like that. This is not working well. We might just have to skip to the crank on itself. Lock it down real tight. We might go loose a little bit, see if we can use the thread to push the thing up, and then tighten it back down and see if we can pry them up after that. Let's give it a few more taps though. Maybe do a little something. Let's see if we can vise this. Alrighty. This pinion gear is in here very tight, and the bearing is still free to spin. Now this is just this is gonna be tricky. You gotta hold this thing. Now if you're gonna be doing stuff like this, you're not using the properly sized wrench, you have to have this guy, this adjustable wrench, as tight as you can. So that includes, you gotta wiggle the wrench up and down while you're tightening it to take out any slack. Alright, now unfortunately, we're going to try and use some hammering. Boy, if this thing drops, this will be a fun one, huh? Felt like something moved, and something sure did move. It's the pinion gears. Now, you need to be really careful when you're doing this kind of stuff. You noticed how I switched teeth after my first hit. I went from there to those guys. You don't want to be doing these kind of impact, high torque operations on only one tooth. I don't know if you can see the shininess here, and it's right there too, right? Because this guy is not a full surrounding contact, unfortunately. Right, so it's not a good contact pattern, so if you continue that, you will damage it. So we're going to try going a little tighter here. Make sure that guy's tight. Bearing's still free to spin. Okay, I think that did move it. So let's take this out of here. You know what, let's get this split washer out. Take it back. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that took a tooth off. Alright. Let's see about trying this again, huh? What's going on. Yeah, I was worried about that. So this is destroying my screwdriver. The steel has now pushed its way up into the handle. I'm being careful tapping it now because I don't want the polymer or whatever to blow up. Just in case it does, put some shades on. Super shorty. Well, as we hammer this down, the steel's going to be exposed and it's going to be a much better hammering. Oh, hey, that looks a lot better now that I'm getting an impact from steel to steel. That looks way better. I think it's actually pulling it out. Wow, I think that's actually working. Moral of the story, go find a all steel screwdriver head if you're gonna do this. So let's see, I don't know if the GoPro cam is gonna show it, but it's almost like there's a bit of material wedged into there. I feel like it's still got a fairly decent detent that we're gonna have to fight, but let's see if this works. Alrighty, let's give her a whirl. That thing actually moved. Make sure that's good and tight, huh? Oh, that's moving it though. Even those little glancing blows are freaking moving it. That's pretty cool. Ooh, that was a good hit. Heck yeah, we'll take it. Alright, let's come back. Take a look. I think we're going to be able to get her. Ooh, it's crunchy. Yeah, it definitely tore off some of the inside of this locking nut thing. And it's on the threads for sure. That sucks. I'm really not giving it that much torque to loosen it. And I think as long as we clear it every so often, kind of like if you were tapping, I think that'll be alright. Alright, come on, come on, come on, baby. Yeah, it gouged a couple teeth here. That sucks. Alright, so we need that. Can't get rid of it. We need to very carefully take this guy out and flip it upside down. We don't want to lose these washers until we know what we need and what we don't need. So we're going to try and very carefully not lose anything here. Woo, like that. Yeah. Alright, so my hands are filthy, slippery, and gross. So I'm gonna go clean my hands up, clean up a good spot on the bench, and we're gonna lay this all out and set it up right.